This was a meetup event hosted by Agnostic Agile on September 17th, with speaker Ivar Jacobson on a Better Scrum with Essence.
That looks better. Perfect, yeah.
So basically the only thing I showed was the agenda. I started to talk about why Essence and why have we ever made this effort to develop something called Essence. And when I say we, it is not just me and my closest colleague. It's an international community. It was called CMAT, and still called CMAT, Software Engineering Method and Theory, with thousands of members. And it has gone through to become an international standard through Object Management Group. I mean, we need to, if we are going to have something that people can rely on, it has to be well proven and discussed and agreed upon by experts. And that is why we took it through a standardization process. Let's see, I'll go to this. So, and then I will talk about what is Essence, and finally, what are the use cases of Essence. So Essence means, we think it means practice freedom. We have been developing software for more than 50 years now. We have been successful, but there are still problems. It's not perfect. We have too many endeavors that fail. Quality is generally too low. Costs are too high. Time to market is too long. And now I don't only talk about me and my closest, but the community, CMAT, are dedicated to unlocking the world's best development practices, putting them into the hands of professionals in the software industry to improve all our lives. That's a mission. And that is a mission that has led to what we see now. But to make this meaningful, Essence has so many potential uses and use cases, but we have to focus on some. So I will talk about the team, what the team really would like to see. And I think most teams would like to say that they want to have a freedom to determine how they work. We also have a key person in basically every large organization, and of course in small, maybe many service roles, is the champion. The champion is a trusted person, is a person that knows about maybe many methodologies, and that other people rely on. She can very well sit down in the organization. She is not typically a manager, but could be that too. And one of the things that she reacts to, or we believe is important to the champion, we want to stop the method war that has been raging for 50 years. We are fighting with one another, and that has gone on, and that has been ridiculed for at least 30 years, but it's still going on. And then we have another key person, and that is the sponsor. Any organization that want to change need to have at least someone paying for it, a sponsor. And ideally, that sponsor is a competent person, technically competent. And the sponsor and champion, they work as a pair to make change happen. Without any of them, I don't think it's easy to make a change. The sponsor reacts to the statement, the software industry with more than 25 million workers behaves more like a craft than an engineering discipline. We want to liberate teams from no brain work, giving them the freedom to be more creative when needed. I mean, most of the work we actually do is we follow patterns. It's not really creative. So we need to remove that no brain work. as much as we can and give people freedom to be more creative when where it is needed. So this is something I think we were fighting for, and I hope you agree with that, to get this freedom to do things in different ways. So I'll go back to the freedom team. The freedom team is not only does not only want to have a freedom to determine how they work, they also want to fix other things. Many teams, they follow method, and they don't really have a choice. Instead of having a practice ecosystem where they can take the best ideas from many sources. The freedom team want to have a freedom and supporting environments to easily adapt their chosen practice to their current challenges, to not follow blindly. And now teams have to work harder and harder instead of working smarter. If we look at the champion, she or he have other things to fix than the methods war. They cannot easily mix and match practice from different methods and create your own method. And this today, if you use any of the famous methods, I don't want to point at any particular of the famous methods, but the practices are decided by a guru or a team of people representing a guru-like behavior. Well, as you understand, I've myself been a guru. I know what it is. It's both sweet and sour. I didn't like the role. I felt it was ridiculous to go to a company, and after meeting with me, the company signed a bill for $2 million. That happened many times, and that was just beyond what I really liked. They have a practices in method prisons, meaning they cannot easily be extracted from one method and used in another without rewriting. So many of the famous methods, they use Scrum, they use user stories. They rewrite them so that the co-founder or the founder of these practices feel they have not understood what it is. So that is, let me say, ridiculous. And this is probably one of the most important reasons we have problems. That is, every method has its own vocabulary and its own homegrown description. How you describe a method is unique for every method. So even if you have a lot of experience in development, learning a new method is like starting all over. So the sponsor, he or she wants to have more engineering or give people freedom to really be creative instead of doing things that shouldn't be dealt with in a creative way. Reacts to that the software industry is like the fashion industry. We new designs far too often. So every time you have a new design, you throw out your old clothes, and the same thing here. Move from one to the other makes a dramatic change for big companies. It costs enormous money to retrain an organization with many developers. And the fact that an industry which is more than 50 years old and so huge is relying on gurus, software methodology salesmen. We need experts, and there's a huge difference between being a guru and an expert. A guru may have been an expert once, but has decided to go his own way and put everything together. And no one is an expert on everything. I also, as a sponsor have a huge problem with that people working on one product with one method can't easily move to a different product team working with another method. I've been through it. I've had that situation. I was an expert when I worked at Ericsson. I wanted to move from one organization to the other. The first 3 months, I had to sit on the benches to learn what I already knew, plus a little new stuff. Not so good. So if you agree with that, then Essence is for you. We have created some web pages that can be interesting to look at, explaining more of this and also going deeper in every point, not only the things I've talked about, but much more. So you're welcome to look at that. So now let's move to Essence. What is it? It's a standard. Because if it wasn't a standard, we couldn't use it as a common ground. It is a common ground. The first time in 50 years we have got one, and that happened in 2014. Since then, we had many people have been working on transforming what they had before to be described on top of Essence. So Essence is a common ground for describing methods and frameworks. It has two aspects. A technical and a human. The technical aspect is to guide. And guide doesn't mean enforce. It means give ideas, give proposals to how to perform a particular practice or many practices in combination. It is a modern user experience, poker-sized cards. This is actually Essence represented in the form of cards. There is more into Essence, but this is what basically you use when you talk about practices. And the reason for that will be hopefully more clear why it's so practical with something you can hold in your hand, you can take out and talk about one single element at a time. It focuses on what is essential. If you go back and look at many of the famous methods, they are described in usually in some way, a homegrown way, as I said it, but most of the text there is not really essential, or most of the website or web pages you have, it's not really essential. If I try to give you an idea, I would say that maybe 5 or 10% what an expert knows of something is the essence. If you have that essence, when you go into a project, you can collaborate with other people. And that is a great start. Then, of course, you can add more and more knowledge on top of the essence. It has two components. There is a language, which is very small. It's less than two hours you understand and can use the language. And then there is the actual kernel. The kernel are the elements that are essential for every software development project, or even not only software, actually, for system engineering, for business engineering. It has been used for all these three. But its primarily focus have been software engineering. And then it's a human aspect of it. It is a thinking framework. Whenever you work, there is things you have to think about. So Essence help you to identify the different dimensions you have to work on when you develop software. It's not only to write code. It's also to understand what is it that the opportunity is. what is it the stakeholders need. And there are other aspects like that have to do with the endeavor itself. So what is that you have to progress and work with. So the team, when you start an organization and select a team for something, the first thing you may have is you have just got funding for them. Next state is that you have collected the team, but they are not collaborating, and so on. There are several states that the team has to go through before it's actually working well together, and so on. And it's also, as I mentioned earlier, every card is like a placeholder for conversation. It gets people enthusiastic and energetic when we can sit and discuss what to do based on one card at a time. And software development is a set of serious interactive games. They are serious in meaning they give value to what you do. There are hundreds of such games that many of them are already existing, but we can foresee a lot being developed in the future. So let's now move to just one instance of using Essence, and that is for Scrum Essentials. This work has been developed with Jeff Sutherland in collaboration with our people. It was Ian Spence who worked directly with Jeff and developed this deck of cards. I actually have a deck of them here. This is Scrum Essentials. I think it's 21 cards, and it has many different roles. But most important, it improves your Scrum implementation. Jeff, as far as I understand now, he uses these cards in both his training of Scrum, but he has similar cards for Scrum at scale and used basically in all training. We have developed a lot of games on top of the ones that have been developed together with Jeff. And these are now available for all of you. If you want to do this kind of teaching, I think, as I understand it now, the cards are just, if I use the word open source, you can use them if you want to do it. I'm sure you would like to have some training before you do it, because it's not trivial. It's quite trivial once you have learned it, but of course, that's it, like everything. By the way, there is a paper published just a month ago too in ACMQ. It describes the essentials experience of Scrum teams improving with Essence, and it's Jeff is a principal author of this paper. So let's look at the cards, and now I will only talk about the cards that really move something, activities or progress elements in the practice. So here we have the activities. They are things to do. We have 5 such in Scrum Essentials. They are described with a short text, and then there is an activity, turn down words, and activities include you need competence to perform a particular activity. In the sprint retrospective, you need to have a leadership competence at level 2 and management competence of level, the other way around, 3 for leadership and 2 for management. It's hard to read, I understand that. And out of it comes the element improvement will get to ready or state ready or beyond. So it's a little language here. So I understand you don't see that immediately now, but it's a very simple language to describe. And these cards are when you take up one card, hold it in the hand, and you discuss it with your team. Then we have another group which are things to progress. In this case, we have the sprint is something you progress, the product backlog item progress, and an improvement is something you progress. The symbol you see up there looks like is intended to look like an alpha, the alpha letter in the Greek alphabet, but of course has also the idea of a progress fish that swims. And in this case, improvement has 3 different states: identified, ready, and done. And every such state has a checklist. I'll show that soon. The key thing, these are new for software engineering. They didn't exist before we started to develop Essence, but they represent very intangibles. You cannot, it's not a document or anything like that. They are things you know exist and you can improve it. You will see other examples soon. And then things to produce that you really, we are touchable things, for instance, work products. And in Scrum, there are 5 such work products. Definition of done is one of them. And it describes these work products have a level of detail. What level of detail do we want this work product to reach while we work with it? Okay, so these are the 3 groups. On top of that, there are also patterns. I believe there are 8 patterns in Scrum, and they describe principles, roles, and other things. The alphas have states, and they are on cards. So, for instance, we have here 2 examples, and they have 3 states. They are, and every such state is described with a checklist. So, for example, the product backlog item has 3 states: identified, ready, done. And identified has every one of these states have a number of check boxes that you need to check to reach this state. So here we, for instance, have we reached this state identified for a particular product backlog item. The important thing is that these checks measure real outcome, not whether an activity is done or a document is produced. So here's a simple example of a game. It's about improving retrospectives. We have on the table laid out a sheet, and it has on the x-axis we have 3 values: good, or not so good, bad, and bad is the red, and in middle we are not bad or good. And then on the y-axis, going downwards, we have whether it's important, very important, less important, or irrelevant. Now you take the cards, 1 card at a time, and discuss within a team, how good are we on doing this? And you put the card in one of these coordinates, and if something is important and bad, which is just beyond the red little face, then it probably is something we need to do about it. And working this way, people very practically and empowered and engaged discuss how to improve, how to do retrospectives. People just love it. And there are many such games. So originally we decided we are going to focus on the essentials, and we want a new user experience. The old user experience based on cards and based on books or web pages are outdated. We need something that is good for the people doing the job. One of the problems we have had in all work on methods since eternity, since we started, is that we can get method experts, process freaks, and so on, very excited about something. They love it. They love it and want to believe it's easy to sell to others. But when we come down to the people who really going to do the job, they could care less, or they feel this is just academic drivel, or they just don't understand it. So that is one of the things we really need to address. It's to create a user experience so basically everyone in the team are attracted to what we are doing. So now we are going further. We are liberating the practices from their methods and make them available in an ecosystem. We talk about setting free the practices from their method prisons. And then teams can select, if you have these in an ecosystem, the teams can select their own method by composing practices from this ecosystem. If a practice is just in English, the composition is of course trivial, but English is not a clear language. So it doesn't help much. So composition is important because depending on which practice you compose, there will be conflicts you have to resolve and conflicts and overlap. Actually, one of my most popular papers is this paper published in ACMQ, Tear Down the Method Prisons, Set Free the Practices. This can help you to explain. There's much more described in that paper than I have a chance to talk about now. So now we get to, we have talked a little about essence, and we have given you an idea of how Scrum can be described using essence and the value that brings to Scrum. There is more into it. Essence, we have lots of use cases of essence based on which persona we want to support. That is about essence in practice. And we start from what we call the essence infinity loop. Every team, even if every organization, has to learn what to do, how, and agree on what to do. And then they have to deliver. And these two things go on infinitely. Learning, delivery, and so on. We discover what are the practices that are available, that you can use. Then every practice you exploit, understand what are the elements in the practice, what are the activities, what are the work products, what are the alphas, and how they relate to one another. You adopt it in the team start to work with it, understand how to work with the practice, and they will adapt it so it fits to their own needs. The practice is a starting point and the description, but then they can do what they need to do, with it. We can change, we can add new checklists, and we can add new elements to the practice. When they plan, they understand where they are in the project and what to do next. The do is, of course, where you actually do the backlog items. If you use Scrum, one backlog item after the other, and you identify what the meaning of done is. That can be very well defined by these cards. To get done is a particular state for a particular element, most often an alpha. Once you have done that, you do your retrospective, understand what can be done better, and you adapt it again to what you want to have. And this goes on round after round. The use cases of Essence summarize key things you can do. And they here are a journey that the people may take. The journey starts in 1 and goes to point 4. First point is understand the essentials of Scrum, understanding it. It's a use case. See where you are in your endeavor, plan your next achievements, and adapt Scrum to your own needs. Then we have 2 use cases here. One is live guidance, and that means you get guidance while you actually work. And today, in these times when we have to work remotely, support for distributed working is another use case. No questions so far, Nabil?
None so far, no. And
Okay.
guys, just a reminder, if you have any questions for now, just please feel free to use the chat. There's some for the end I can see. If you have any questions now, just let me know.
Yes. I mean, to do this monologue and not see anyone is a different experience than standing in front of an audience and talking.
I can imagine it must be strange.
It's fun. It's fine. It's fine. It's not fun, but it's fine. Okay, so let's understand the essential Scrum. And here we use these cards that summarize the moving things of Scrum and maybe activities and so on. We don't go deep into the patterns in this understanding, but the patterns are very important because they help us to do these things in a good way. So we look at the different practice elements and see how they relate to one another. What does each activity achieve? What competency we need? What pattern applies here? And so on. And we have these 3 kinds of patterns: principles, roles, and techniques. So here is a game board. We have laid out the cards, all the cards in to the right. By the way, to really understand Scrum, sitting and listening to classes is not the most efficient way of learning and understanding Scrum. Having dialogues and discussing the different elements of Scrum and how they relate to one another is a very powerful way of learning. So there are many different games you can play to understand Scrum, but here's one where you relate the values, Scrum values, to the different elements of Scrum. In the circle to the right, we have the different elements, and to the right, in the middle, we put in the Scrum values and see how they relate to every one of these other cards. So we take one of these Scrum values, for instance, respect, and when we identify, go around the circle and identify what kind of relations this have and what impact does it have with the other moving cards. Moving in the sense that they actually move, progress your work. And you may have a yellow sticker and put on each relation here. Very powerful, very simple, and this is what we mean by a game. Second use case was, where are you in your endeavor? Find out the status of health and make it visible to everyone as we work. Here the alphas are key because every alpha has a defined life cycle, which help you to keep track on health and status. So let's see. Here we have to the left the different. I think something has been shut off on the top of the slide, but the inner column to the left we have each alpha. There are 7 of them. You can see them as different dimensions of your endeavor that you have to pay attention to. So the top, which you cannot read, is stakeholder. Second is there is an opportunity. The reason we do something is because there is an opportunity. We have requirements, and requirements is the term that was selected because it's understood by most people. It doesn't mean, an alpha doesn't mean that you have a document or anything like that. You can have requirements in your head, but the quality of the requirements we care about. We have a software system, we have team, work, and way of working. Way of working is basically your method for working. And even that develops from state to state. From the beginning, you may have an idea of it, and as you go further, you will have more and more knowledge. So now, and then to the right, so these are alpha cards to the left. And to the right, we have alpha state cards, meaning for each one of these to the left, there is as many cards as there are states for that alpha. So I think I can only give you an idea now. Diving deeper would be wonderful, but that is outside the scope of this meeting. So I have to now give you an idea how we use it. So here you sit with your team, or this can be used by someone who is responsible for many teams to understand where each team is. So you ask, take the first card at the top and look at it and see, have this been done? Have we reached the state recognized? Which of the stakeholders are recognized? We know who the different groups are. We have got them represented, and we have identified responsibility. So this is done. We move it up to the left. So we basically move it to the left. We go for next one, opportunity, and take the things that are checked. We go for team. The team is funded, and we have a way of working that has reached, the method we have has reached some understanding. So this is where we are. And that can be quite clear understood. It's also agnostic to any method. So you don't talk about which document you produce or anything like that. It's just totally agnostic for all methods to do that. Now we want to plan where to go next. You use, of course, your existing tools to manage small individual things like backlog items. But to get the big picture, like the opportunity and where your stakeholders are, you need these alphas. And the states and checklists guide you what to achieve next. So this is what we had. We have reached the state that we call done. And now where do we go next? You go through and look at every single card from the top down and say what you think you need to do. And you also you do like this. Okay, we want to do that. We want to do that. We want to do move a team forward. We need to move a work alpha forward. So this is what we want to do next. And we have decided not to do anything with these others to the right. So it's very easy to work with a game board. Now, when you do all this, it's very important that because this is basically each row here represents the dimension you want to progress. And there are, as I said, 7 such dimensions. If you go too fast on one dimension, you may discover later that some other dimension disagree. Basically, you have moved in a not balanced wave, as we call it. So in this way, you work and you learn, you identify what is unique for what you want to do. You can now change elements in a practice, but you can also bring in whole new practices like user stories. So this is what we had. These are the moving elements of Scrum. That means the patterns are not involved here, but they also are represented by a card. And now we say we want to add user stories. We just add a new set of cards representing user stories, which is 5 cards plus some patterns that we don't need to care so much about in the merge. It's not that simple. You just take cards. You actually have to do some merge operations. So, for instance, if user stories is the primary way to create product backlog items, then a product backlog item is a user story. There may be others. And it's so practical because you have it in your hand and can look at one thing at a time. It's very clearly defined what is a thing. Now we get to my favorite, live guidance. Most methods, as I mentioned earlier, they are basically designed for method experts, people who love methods. Whereas the people who really have to do the job have problems to find it interesting to read about methods. They are not, they don't care. They do what people tell them to do. They don't get really engaged. This is a problem. It's always been a problem, and it needs to be addressed. Live guidance means you get, you work, you get support, you get suggested guidance, which you can decide to follow or you decide to do something else. But at least you need to discuss, because if a team, you have to agree on what to do. Here we have an example. We are looking at the team working with Scrum, and they have we create a product backlog, and here we have come to a particular state of a work. Some items are ordered in product backlog, and we select the candidates for next sprint, which are a set of product backlog items. As now we want to create a to-do list, so we know what is it that we have to do to move forward. We want to get to a state, move from identified to ready. And to do that, we have to perform these checklist items, perform the activities required to move the checks to a new state. And there is a missing one. In this case, we are doing the activity product backlog refinement. And now we, for every backlog item that are candidates for next springs, we create a to-do list. So that is the one we have in the middle here. We need to get the item is ordered relative to other identified product backlog items. This is a simple case. Now the team can decide to do more things. And these are a list that the team has come up with at the bottom of the white area to the right. Invite the whole team, summarize the vision and roadmap, and so on. With this, we help the team to understand to understand what to do and to move the endeavor forward to a next state. I think this is my favorite of all the different use cases. This is a cross-cutting use case, so it can be applied for all the other things we do. And of course, distributed working. Today, more than ever, we want to work distributed. And people can sit distributed but feel they are in a virtual co-location. So we imagine an interactive space, collaboration space, where the team collaborate with each other and continue to learn and deliver as we move forward. So Essence in practice go through this infinity loop through the different states, and we have already tools such as Jira, GitLab, and so on that help us in the delivery cycle. They are very good in the do space. They are concrete down to instances. So they are instance management tools. Essence in practice help, as we can see it, can help with use cases. Thanks to Essence, I should say, it's thanks to the design of Essence, we can create use cases. So it helps us throughout the whole infinity cycle. It doesn't compete with this, or doesn't need to compete with these tools, Jira, GitLab, and so on. It is more like it gives us a big picture. So we understand not only the details, but the whole picture of how which practices to use, how to learn each individual practice, how to adopt it for our own need. So with that, we have a background. And now I'd like to say a few words about how this essence is adopted. In the academic world, we have very good penetration. The book has, this is the book, Essentials of Modern Software Engineering, free the practices from the method prisons. It took us 5 years to write that book. And the reason was that we wanted it really to go through a lot of reviews of among university professors. We did 5 different versions of a book, and the step between each version was quite big, so it took us almost 1 year. Now we had our jobs too, but we really wanted to get feedback to understand where the problems were and how it could be resolved. The book is intended for first-year students in software engineering, but the objective was that even experienced people would, let me say, love to read it, because they got this complex world with all these methods explained in a quite simple way. So more than 10 universities are already teaching it. We have many small reports of usage. Professor Pekka Abrahamsson from Jyväskylä in Finland, he said several years ago that my software engineering education in the future will be driven by essence. He is not the only one. There are many others in Siberia, in United States, even in Sweden, amazingly enough. In Gothenburg, we have people teaching it. And then we have recently, it's a couple of months ago, created a forum. It's actually not me, it's the community, CMAT community. We've more than 30 university professors to not only promote Essence, but to develop assets so you can teach Essence. I love his quote. 400 years from now, people will talk about Essence in the same way as people today talk about what Newton and Galileo did 400 years ago. This is what Professor Carlos Zapata suggests, and you can read about it here. Now, you can take it for what it is, but the important idea in this is that Essence is not like any other method or framework. It is something more fundamental that has a likelihood that it will survive these other methods. And even if it needs to be changed and modified, it can. We also see that today lots of practices are being defined using Essence. There are more than 100 practices described using Essence and captured in the form of cards like this. And some of them are public. And it's happening all around the world. I'm so surprised when I hear about people in basically every country using it and doing it. And that's, of course, what we hope would happen. But Essence doesn't compete with any method. That's very important. It's not a method in itself. It's like basics for a method, but it's generic. So everybody can say, yeah, this is what it is. It makes these methods better. And we have evidence for that. Jeff Sutherland and actually we gave a talk organized by SIGSOFT. We had, I can't remember, but it was a big group that attended a Better Scrum with Essence, the same title as today, but a very different talk. You can still look at it here, and there is probably something you will learn that I have not talked about today. So, welcome to the future. It's here today. You are most welcome to contact me anytime you want. And I would appreciate get feedback. So most welcome. Thank you very much.
Ivar, thank you very much. Normally, this is when we have a massive round of applause. So unless anyone wants to unmute and clap with me, I'll just be clapping for that.
Thank you.
There we go. Virtual applause.
Yeah, that was
incredible.
fantastic. That was fantastic. Yeah.
We have some questions in the chat. So if you are okay, I will shoot some questions at you because I'm sure people are dying to hear what you would say. So what I'll do is I'll actually read out the name of the person who has asked the question, just to give you a chance to unmute and ask the question directly. If I don't hear anything from you in a few seconds, then I can just ask your question for you. Charlotte Lube?
I should say that I see a number of people writing chats now, messages. So thank you very much.
Yeah, there's some applause in the chat as well. Go ahead, Charlotte.
Hi. I actually think that as Ivar went through the rest of the presentation, he actually answered it for me, is that you can apply the essence to whatever methodology you've got. So I actually have the answer to my question. Thank you.
Okay. Cool. No worries. Let's go on to the next one with Antonio Delgado. Would you like to unmute and ask your question?
Hi to everyone. I'm in Colombia right now. I actually am a student from Professor Zapata, so I'm doing my PhD actually. And I have a question that in the company where I work, several areas are actually using Scrum or Agile methods. So I was wondering if I can use or they can use the essence in such a department like the human resource department or the financial department, or is just limited to the software development department?
No, we are not limited to software development. Actually, from the beginning, many people wanted the essence to be for system engineering. But the team that were leading the CMAT felt, let's be successful with software. If we don't become successful with software, we'll never be successful with anything else. So, but now it's used for system engineering, for business engineering. One example is that in Sweden, the government organization has developed, with the help of people who know Essence, developed an innovation essentials package. It's 8 practices for support innovation. And it's innovation where we talk about between big companies and startups. So there are 8 practices. It has become very popular. It's very practical, and we expect it will be take off quite well.
Okay, thank you very much.
And system engineering, of course, is already using it. The essence itself, to really be more generic than it is for software engineering, requires very small changes. Very small.
Thank you. Thank you for your answer.
Amazing. Let's go on to the next question. Dave E., would you like to unmute and ask your question? Alrighty, I can ask for you. So Dave asks, before teams can work well, we often have to change a considerable amount of legacy management thinking. Is there anything in Essence to help here?
Teams get a lot of help from Essence in getting managers to understand it. Managers see great value in more engineering and removing craft where we don't need craft. Craft is needed if we need to be creative. But much of the work we do in traditional software engineering, like, for instance, what banks, insurance companies, even telecom vendors do, is following existing patterns over and over again. So executives get easily into this, and we can easier than before get them to understand the Agile values.
Amazing. Thank you for the answer. Hopefully
I mean, we are working with clients that where, as you heard from my talk, I don't believe a change can happen just because the management say it or because a champion suggest it. There needs to be a collaboration between these two personas, and that is very much helped thanks to Essence, because they can speak the same language, and we talk about the essentials.
Brilliant, thank you. Next question from Ishmael. Ishmael, would you like to unmute and ask your question? Julio, I can answer it. Ask it. The question from Ishmael is, can Essence be considered the modern substitute for SPEM, S-P-E-M?
Well, SPEM was also, in a way, my baby. It was developed back in early 1990. It was developed when we believed that it was process freaks that we had to teach. And then if we got process freaks to accept it, we could change the companies. That was, of course, totally wrong. We should have been able to understand that ourselves. But so SPEM is very, let's say, process freaky and not designed for the teams. And but the idea was to create, to have a standard, and then to describe practices in a formal way, much more formal than we are talking about here. Much more like closer to UML, if I say so. So this Essence language is very simple.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for the answer. One more, we have Olivier Dupin. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly.
Yes, good evening. So my question is a little bit provocative. Is Essence simpler than SAFe?
Say it again, the last is.
Simpler than SAFe framework.
Yes. I mean, first, I have to tell you that my company has basically two things we do. One is we do what clients want us to do, namely to teach, and SAFe is the most popular. We are probably one of the, well, I would say we are maybe the best, most competent company in SAFe in Europe. SAFe is one instance of a framework, and Essence could be, in my mind, it would be an excellent tool to use to describe SAFe, to make it simpler and to make it easier to adopt new things and to keep things better related to one another. But SAFe has been very successful without using Essence. And we will see what happens. My intention is to try to convince my friend Dean Leffingwell that SAFe would benefit from using Essence.
Awesome.
I think that was kind of brave. Yeah. Okay.
I can see Olivier tried to say thank you, but he was muted. There we go. A couple more questions, if that's okay. Charlotte, do you have one more? Would you like to unmute again?
Hi, yes. Sorry, I wanted to know how we can get more training on Essence so that we could implement this inside our organizations and get access to the cards.
best thing is to talk to us. And we are a very open company. We believe in the agnostic agile principles. There are things that we do a lot of training, both in Scrum Essentials and in Scrum at Scale and use cases and Essence, of course, is we have a full-fledged training program in these things. So just please contact me. You should have my email address, Charlotte.
I have somebody's email address, and I've done some training through your company, so I'll definitely get in contact. Thank you.
Thank you.
Amazing. Kyle Griffin, would you like to unmute and ask your question?
Hi, Kyle.
Howdy. Hi, Ivar. So I come at Agile from, so I start in XP, before XP, OO and patterns, back from your UML stuff and before. And so I'm coming at all of this from a patterns movement. But when I understand a pattern is a problem definition first and a solution second. Right? And that's the biggest problem I have when talking patterns is everybody wants to talk solutions instead of talking about the problems.
Yes.
So adapter solves the problem of integrating a third-party component into an existing hierarchy. A stand-up solves the problem of doing a quick team coordination rather than a long status thing. Right?
Yes.
Are we seeing the problem definitions in this essence? Sorry.
No, it's a very good question. It's actually one of them I haven't heard before. So patterns, in essence, are three different kinds of patterns. They are roles, a role pattern. A pattern is basically a configuration of relationship between other elements. So it's not the same as in design patterns. I mean, I know the gang of four, all of them.
I'm not planning to teach you patterns.
Okay. So these patterns are a relationship that are important. For instance, a role. What kind of competence do you need to have to play a particular role? You need to maybe so in that way you can define lots of roles, but you have only a few competences. So we have identified as core competence there are only 5, I think, and six: analyst, analysts competent, develop competent, tester competence, coaching competence, leadership competence, and so I don't work with it daily myself, so sorry for that. But it's a different thing, but it's a very powerful. And if anything will be developed in the near future, in essence, it's that we will probably detail the patterns so we get more common ground when we talk about patterns. I really liked your LinkedIn post the other day.
Thank you so much. It's very kind of you.
I'm a big fan of your posts as well, Kyle. I see you quite a lot on my feed.
I'm kind of
amazing
loud.
Question. There's nothing wrong with that. We have another question from Ishmael. Ishmael, if you'd like to unmute. I can hear you're sort of static, but I'm not sure if you're actually talking, Ishmael. I'm afraid I can't hear anything, so I will ask the question for you. Ishmael asks, what are the recommendations for adapting some methodology to Essence? An example would be workflows and tools, etc.
Actually, it's surprisingly easy to essentialize an existing method. It is more the polishing that takes time to make the details of a card perfect, better than we ever were before. Because since you only have a space of one card, you will have to be express you very clear. So I can tell you that we have essentialized many big methods in both Internet of Things. In DSDM was one method we essentialized many years ago, and it has to be really big to take more than a couple of months. I mean, I don't know exactly, but even a huge method to take more than half a year, or say half a year to a year, would man year. I'm not talking about many man years. So, because the essence is really small, but then it's so powerful to have the essence in your hand like this, and be able to take out and talk about one single card, and you put it on the table. Everyone in the team can discuss it and learn from it, and it's so engaging. I remember when I gave a presentation in China for a particular company, and there were 30 Scrum Masters in the room, and we presented essence just about as I did today. Imagine I could take all of you and sit in front of a table and put out the cards and assign someone to be a team lead and the other team members, and now figure out where they are. Just that simple game. With all the discussions we had, we looked at the cards and said, have we reached this state yet? It's so hard to communicate emotion as people feel in these moments. But this emotion reflects engagement.
That was a lovely answer. Thank you very much. Okay, guys, we've had quite a few questions. It is almost 8 p.m. here in the UK. I think it's even later where Ivar is in the lovely Alps. So I think it's time to wrap up. Ivar, again, thank you so much. It was a very insightful talk. I can see more comments during the questions, expressing their thanks for inspiring everyone with the innovation that you've demonstrated today. Everyone who attended, thank you very much. I appreciate you spending an evening with us and Ivar. Hopefully you'll see you at the next one. And yeah, guys, thank you very much. Have a lovely evening. And again, thank you to Ivar.
I loved it myself. Thank you.
Amazing.
And
Great to
so
hear.
please, if you really want to make my day, send me some questions and